Nicole, I do have one more question.
There are no more questions. What do you have?
I was talking to somebody the other day about God and stuff like that, and they tried to bring up, like, a discrepancy in the Bible about how it's not actually an apple and how it was meant to be evil, and how can we trust a book and that's been translated and all of these other things.
Oh, that's fun. Go ahead.
And to be honest, I mean, he really didn't want to have a full conversation about it because he was really just trying to make his point.
Yeah.
But if I did sit down and have an actual conversation, what would be the best ways to go about that?
So, first and foremost, you do your own research. The best place I'd start for research is a book or is a teaching called How We Got Our Bible by Chuck Missler. It's dry as boring can be if you hate old, boring guys from back then. But it's incredibly valuable. How We Got Our Bible is a very, 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 very good teaching. It talks about the Council of Nicaea. It talks about the Council of Trent. It talks about when the Jews rewrote their Bible. It talks about when the Catholics rewrote theirs. It talked about why the book of Enoch is not in our Bible and why the book of Timothy is not in our Bible, Thomas is not in our Bible, and why we don't have 1st and 2nd Maccabee in our Bible. And it talks about why different religions, different versions of our religion have different Bible books in there. But it also goes into the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the Dead Sea Scrolls, Rebecca and I have seen the book of Esther in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it matches word for word. Same thing as Isaiah, word for word for what we have now, manuscript-wise. We have in the Museum of the Bible in D.C., there is a fragment from Matthew that was written originally from Matthew on a codice. So it was written within 20 years of Christ walking the earth. And that is wild that we still have that. And it word for word still matches. My favorite version of the Bible, obviously I love using the New King James because people are familiar with it, but the International Standard Version is based on the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it's the most accurate version there is. The King James Version, the advantage is we know its weaknesses. We know where it mistranslated words. And I pointed those out earlier in our other one about Genesis, when I pointed out that it could be better translated, but the earth had become. As far as it being an apple, it was not an apple. It was just a fruit. It wasn't meant to represent evil. It's the knowledge of good and evil. And once you take a bite of it, if you take a bite of the tree of life, you live forever. And then you have the knowledge of good and evil. And so, that is a weird thing. And it's hard to understand because it is a fruit, but it's also more than a fruit. But a more important thing to point out is that Eve ate it because she was tricked by Satan. But Adam ate it and was not tricked by Satan. He ate it because he knew that because Eve ate it, she now has to die. He didn't want to live his life without Eve. So he took a bite of it too, knowing that then God would either have to save them both or kill them both. And Jude points that out. And Jude points it out, and Paul points it out, that Adam was not deceived. But he did it anyway.
I wanted to make a point real quick.
But the big thing is I would point out is that there's a ton of resources out there. But the Bible, when you look at the King James Version, we know what is inaccurate about it. And it makes it a lot easier to work with.
There's also by Chuck Missler, if you want to spend the time to really dig into it, there is Learn the Bible in 24 Hours. And it is obviously 24 1-hour sessions that you listen to, and he
gives you a brief overview of everything.
Gives you basically a brief overview of the entire Bible throughout that whole thing. And that would be even just a good, while you're working out at the gym or while you're driving back and forth from college and home.
But he gets into the weeds about it. Hey, there's another guy that gets really into the weeds a lot. And actually I was just watching him earlier today because Jordan Peterson. Yeah. Everybody knows Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, love him or hate him. I don't really feel one way or another about him, but, he just had a conversation a couple months ago with a guy named John Lennox. And I think I talked about John Lennox last time. That dude is brilliant. Triple doctorate from Oxford, Cambridge, and Harvard. And one of his big things is what he wrote a book called The 6 Days That Divide the World. And in it, he goes into how do we know what the Bible is true and what the Bible meant and so on and so forth. Especially when it talks about the word day and like in the day something was created, so on and so forth. But like as far as saying translations of the Bible are inaccurate, to be honest, the King James, the New King James, and the International Standard Version, they do have some faults, but they're well documented. As far as why we don't accept the Book of Enoch, it contradicts itself. If you read it one time, it quickly realizes that it contradicts itself because it does not ascribe the origin of evil to Satan, but a group of angels, and there's a bunch of other stuff. It reads like rabbinical fan fiction more than anything. Like it's their commentary on probably what would have happened, and it's not that good. When you read like the Book of Thomas or Tishri, or you read, at least I think that's what it's called, and then you have Maccabees, First and Second Maccabees. They clearly are like historical books, but they're not God-inspired books, and they contradict other things in the Bible. The advantage to the canonical books that we have is that they never contradict themselves, and if you do find a contradiction, you should get super happy and rejoice because you're probably about to find something very, very interesting. And people love to point out different verses, like Adventures in Odyssey used to point out there's a verse that says, you know, it's better that a man should not, if he's not married, he should remain unmarried. But then there's another verse that says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and gains favor in the eyes of the Lord. And so it's like, you know, one says, answer a fool according to his folly, and the other one says, do not answer a fool according to his folly. So it's like, you could try to find contradictions in the Bible. You can even try to find, like, oh no, this word was...
Context is a big part.
Yes, but you can also try to find where there is incorrections and there's errors in how the way it was translated. A lot of that has to do with some of the... Oh, man, what were they called? Were they Nicaeans? Perhaps? There was these two guys... who they denied the deity of Christ, and they were translating the Bible, and they were very good at translating the Bible, except they denied the deity of Christ, and they tried to mess some stuff up too. But long story short, you can spend hours and hours and hours digging into it, and at the end of the day, you'll come away with the conclusion that there are some errors, but they're well documented. And what we have, we fully understand. But the advantage is what we have is not a picture, where if you pull out a part of it, we no longer see what it is. What we have is a hologram. It's a 3D projection. And even if you pull out a part of it, you can still see it. But much like a hologram can only be illuminated by the laser that created it. And so, like, you have to be able to... Any other thing, you're going to get a false image. And so that's kind of how it works. If you read the Bible through any other lens than the one that created it, you're going to get a false image. And at the same time, you can try to go ahead and pull things out of it, and it's still going to give us a complete enough image. We know that we're missing books of the Bible. We know that there's one more letter to the Corinthians that we don't have, that it mentions. So we still get a full picture though. Like they say, the way the gospel works is that it is sprinkled line upon line, here a little, there a little, precept by precept, you know?
Yeah, no, that definitely answers my question.
I would also say, though, too, a lot of people who come about you, like, who are going to approach you in that manner and who are specifically there to trip you up. This might sound a little, like, silly and out there, but, like, realize it is also a form of spiritual warfare. That is, because, like, as you very quickly, I'm sure, realized by this person, they weren't going to be willing to actually sit down and have a conversation with you. They were probably just sitting there trying to trip you up and trying to make you feel foolish, or like, you know.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
And like this is like happens all the time, and like, again, like I said, it's very easy to just go ahead and like, this is obviously just an attack, and this is obviously just somebody who is just being used to facilitate an attack.
But also, that's why you always got to be in the Word, learning all this stuff, so that you're always ready to teach and correct and rebuke and instruct.
Yep, absolutely. I think you guys answered my question perfect.
All right, Nana, get some sleep.
Hey, I love you guys. Thanks.
Love you, Nat.
Love you, Nat.